Hey friends, welcome to the Plant Strong podcast. I am Lisa Bennett, your host. We are hoping we have some new faces around here, some listeners who may be new. And if so, guys, we are part of the Stadia podcast network. Stadia is a church planting organization that helps you plant thriving, growing, or multiplying churches. And we are kind of an affinity space of that, for specifically a place where women can gather, who are leaders, who are Jesus followers, who are just kingdom-minded, want to grow and be a part of a bigger thing. And specifically, we have kind of cycled through topics that would be helpful for women in church planting, regardless of your role and kind of leadership in those spaces. It could be completely behind the scenes, primarily up front. Wherever you are on that spectrum, we believe that we are a place where you will find connection, support, understanding. You feel like you're seen and not feel like you're out there alone doing things and struggling with things that no one else battles with. We celebrate a lot around here. We pray that that is encouragement for you as you are celebrating just the movement that God is doing in your neighborhood, in your community. Sometimes that's on a very tiny scale, and those matter. And sometimes it's on a larger scale, and that matters. And so we hope you feel welcome. And again, this is not just for church planners. We feel like the content we share here is really something that everyone can grab onto. And we just have a lot of fun here. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Today is no different. And today is really special because since we're talking about church planting, we have Suzan Thompson, who is 3 weeks old in their church official launch journey. And that's prime. That's just a season that is very special. And so we don't often get voices on here that are that fresh. And so I am eager for you to learn from Suzan, celebrate with her, learn with her. I think you're going to get so much out of it. So let's jump in. Well, good morning, Suzan. Welcome to the Plant Strong podcast.
Good morning, Lisa. I'm excited to be here and honored that you have.
Well, the honor is truly ours. We are so excited. You are the first guest that we've ever had that is this fresh in the process.
Oh my goodness.
And guys, listeners, I told her when she tuned in this morning, I'm like, well, girl, you are looking fresh as a daisy. No one would know you are 3 weeks into this church planting adventure.
Yeah, and I said, looks are deceiving.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. And we all know that that's true. Thank goodness for makeup and other tools that can help us keep a little bit fresher.
Absolutely.
Oh, well, we are honored to have you. And we are going to jump in pretty quickly because, again, I just feel like it's such an honor to have someone who's in the thick of it. And I know that our listeners are like, Lisa, zip it. We want to hear from Suzan. We want to know all the things. So I would love to get us started for you to just give us a little thumbnail bio. I think that helps our listeners remember that you are just a person just like them, different likes and loves and interests and all the things, but we are all just people trying to be people, trying to figure this thing out. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm Jamaican, if you haven't heard my accent. I was there, grew up partially there. Then when I was 14 years old, my family migrated to New York, where we lived for the majority of my life until I got married and had kids, and then we moved to Georgia. So I've been a wife now for 18 years. This April will actually be 19 years. So I'm excited about that.
Yes.
We pretty much grew up together. We got married around, I was 23, turned 24 the next day. And so we got married pretty young. And man, he's the guy God chose for me. It's been a journey.
Yeah.
And we have 3 boys. Our 17-year-old, he graduates high school this May. Wow. Our 15-year-old, he'll turn 16 this month. And he's already scheduled his driver's test. And we have a 9-year-old who's in elementary school. He's in the 4th grade and doing really well. And I wear many hats. Many hats, too many to tell, but I'll just share a few.
Yeah.
I have worked as a high school English teacher since 2004, starting out in the New
Okay.
York City public schools, and for pretty much all my adult career, I've been teaching. But
Okay.
now I'm teaching online. Since moving to Georgia, I started teaching online about 2013. So before the pandemic, I was already an online high school teacher.
Okay.
That's been real. I also I'm an author, studied education for my doctoral degree, and I have a specialty in e-learning. So that's why
Oh,
online learning is so special to me. And
yeah.
I do it now even as a writing coach, a book coach, and editor. So that's another hat I wear as a business owner,
Yeah. Yeah.
helping people to get their books done and published. And so I love to just help anyone who's in need of help that way, editing, things of that nature. I just
Okay.
love what I do. But most recently, I stepped into this co-pastoring role, and with my husband, that's just been a real honor for me. And now we recently planted our church here in Dallas, Georgia, and Deeper Church here in Dallas, Georgia. And we just wrapped up, as you mentioned, it's been 3 weeks, so we just wrapped up our third Sunday service, and we haven't thrown
Amazing.
in the towel yet.
That's right.
um, so that's me in a nutshell.
That is
I'll share a little bit
incredible.
more, but yeah, that's
Yeah. No, I love that. And we love hearing it's so um I don't know, it's just so affirming to hear the different passions that you have because we'll, talk about this later, I'm sure, but just to be reminded as the listeners that everything in your path through your life, God is always using. Nothing's wasted. Nothing is just thrown in as like a side thought. It is all a part of your story. And so there is never has been, never will be one iconic prototype of what a church planter looks like. That's just not true. There's certainly things that we're wired to do that help,
yeah.
but there are so many different expressions, and I love when we can kind of dive into that a little bit. So kind of we're gonna go there a little bit later, but right now I'm thinking that the top question on everybody's mind is how are you feeling? Like, what does it feel like to be right now in just having passed week 3 of your gatherings, your public gatherings? What does that feel like right now?
Well, I'd say it feels like such a surreal moment
Mm-hmm.
whenever I think about this season of my life. Ooh, that's the word that comes to mind. I often feel like I'm being carried by God, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense.
Yeah.
It feels like a supernatural moment. It's
Mm.
inexplicable. It's unexplainable. I
Yeah.
mean, it's
Yeah.
daunting, but it's not because I'm literally being carried by God
That's good.
and the angels He's put in charge of us. That's how I feel.
Yeah.
And I say I'm being carried, especially because of the overwhelming support Rohan
Mm-hmm.
and I have received after going through Stadia and Creekside Church support and Greg and Leilani, Sizemore having, being there for us, backing us the way they have. It's a moment that I'd say, has been prophesied, and we are now living in the fulfillment of that
Yeah.
prophecy. It might be weird for some, but it's truly a fulfillment of a prophecy and our calling. And so that's the only other way I'd describe it. It's a God moment, really.
So
That
beautiful.
sometimes I can't believe is really happening. It's a
Yeah.
moment in which we're just leaning on the everlasting arms of God
Yeah.
as He directs us. And
Yeah.
this is a moment I prayed for my husband concerning his ministry, his calling.
Yeah.
Sometimes we see more than others see of themselves. And so it's a moment I prayed for, but didn't know that this was what I prayed for, if that makes sense.
That's so good.
It's
That's so
surreal.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Um, that's beautiful. I love that image of being carried. So, I'm going to break in. We've done a lot of prep leading in, guys listening, but Suzanne's got some big news that is just exciting that I want her to share. What did you say? And she was like, do I share this? Like, is this okay? I was like, are you kidding me? Yeah, you're going to share it. So tell us what your news is.
Oh my goodness. God has been so good. So we've been sharing a space. The pastor for the church that we've been sharing space with, he was so gracious enough to have us come in and do a service after their service. And 3 weeks in, he's told us that he's resigned his position, and he's basically handed over everything to us. He said, "This is your space. Everything in it is yours."
I just chilled, like hair standing on my arms.
I mean, he said, "What's left in our bank account is yours, and that will cover our first 3 months." I mean, we're just 3 weeks in. Like, this is what I mean about when I say surreal. It's I can't even express.
Yeah. And I think what is okay, so there's a tension that immediately pops in my mind, because Jeff and I have been involved in new church work and established church work our entire ministry lives, our entire adult lives, really our whole lives, because our dads were ministers. And so there's a tension here, because another church is dissolving. Like, there's a church that wasn't flourishing, had reached a life cycle, which is a reality. Like, it just is. The churches that Paul started are not currently gathering in the exact same, like, if Paul's churches aren't around today, they're just different expressions. Obviously, you get what I'm saying, but sometimes we get really hung up on, a certain church, that one, if it didn't make it or thrive for decades and decades and decades, then it was a failure. It was not. There's a life cycle, but look what the humility and kingdom mindedness of that church that life cycle had reached an end. I literally, my arms are just like, the hairs are just going crazy all over me, because this is the beauty of the body of Christ.
Exactly. And so even when I share now, being this light about it and happy, I mean, this guy went through a process.
Sure.
I mean, even when we met him, we could tell that he had been in decision, but God had been dealing with him. And so to get to this point where he was able to just let go and say, "This is yours," that is incredible. We asked him, "Are you okay?" But he was lighter than we'd ever seen before. He was, even his last message, it was just, filled with passion. And we can tell that this is the best decision for him. And the board, they were just on board with everything and just felt like this is what God wanted to do. It's as if God had set them up for us. I mean,
it's so good. It's so good. And I'm so excited that we get to be with you in a fresh moment of when you've received that news. What a gift for us. So it's just so delightful. I'm so happy. So obviously, prayerfully, we always are praying that there are potential future church planters listening in. And my guess, even the future planners and those that are currently getting ready to launch, maybe they've already launched, but they're still really fresh, they might love to know, is there anything from a super practical point in this exact season where you're 3 weeks in, is there something that you would have wished that maybe you had done just a tweak differently, or maybe significantly differently? So what is that? And then what are you celebrating that you feel like, goodness, we really listened and to God's leading on that. That was a good thing that we did to get to this point. What's those rich reflections that you have right now?
Well, our biggest challenge leading up to, I'd say, launch day was getting the kids area. If we're doing practical now.
Yeah.
Getting the kids area underway. That was like the biggest thing for me, because what's important is that we're pouring into our children. I mean, they are a huge part of are made for more movement at Deeper Church, and they are the movement. In fact, we call them the movement.
That's so
It's the area that kept me up at night. Like, oh, how are we going to do this? We don't have enough volunteers. And I know many well, I won't say many, but some church planters out there, they go in with quite a few volunteers. We didn't. We had like 20 to start, and that's really not a lot going in. We really came into this without much backing before meeting Greg and Leilani and Stadia. So we had to really build from the ground up when we were talking about our launch team.
Yeah.
So the kids area was a big challenge leading up to launch day, and that was something we prayed about. It's the area that I'm constantly still working on, but we decided like close to the last minute, you know what? Let's see. We have some volunteers for some areas, but let's see if we can hire 2 teachers. Maybe bring them on as independent contractors to start. So we made the decision to hire 2 teachers just to help us to, get our grounding. So, but one of them I hired for the preschoolers. Interviewing her, I had this gut feeling that she wasn't the person for the job, but I only had that impression based on how she was attired. And I said, God, I'm going to give her a chance, because her resume shows that she's, fit for the job, and she had good answers, and she also passed the background check, so I just, didn't go by the gut feeling. I said, I'm going to give her a chance. Leading up to the day, she called, just, explaining something she was going through, which I thought were a little bit unprofessional, so I said, okay, let's keep going with this. We have 1 day left, we need someone else in there. So the same day she came in, and she called. Well, she didn't come in yet. She called. She was lost. There's so many things happening. Should I just tell her to go back home? I didn't. I still pushed past that, So she came in, and for the entire duration of the service, she spent the time mainly on her phone. Okay, and so I was like, God, you're teaching me something here. I'm trying to help someone out. That same day she had called saying she didn't have gas money, things like that. We wanted to help. We're a new church plant, but we don't have all the resources. So let's just give her a chance. So she came in, but she did nothing to get rid of my first impression. The big mistake was me just going away from my gut feeling that, that nudge that God was saying, she won't be a good fit, and thankfully one of them we hired, she was the best. She was a great choice. She's still with us to this day, helping us out. In that, God is teaching us that we need to listen to his voice throughout this process. We're seeing our volunteers. They're thriving, they're accelerating, because we said, okay, we're going to just make some tweaks. We're not going to hire anyone else right now. We're going to see if we can combine 2 classes. And it's been amazing so far. Just saying that we're going to be flexible here. Nothing has to be perfect right now. We're going to grow and roll with the punches, as I said earlier. And so there's always something to learn as we make tweaks along the way. And so we're seeing God do great things in the people. He sent us destiny helpers who are just like willing to just roll with us as we grow. And I would say that would be one of the best examples I could give of us just, just leaning on God as we go through the process of not having everything structured out. That makes sense.
Yes, it does make sense. And that is a great point. Like when you tell that story, I have almost to the letter the same story with children's kind of a lead role in that space from years and years ago. And there were just a series in one day, a series of choices that person had made that I observed that you kind of dismiss, because you're like, well, but we've got to do it this way. Like we've got to have these certain things in place to have a thriving excellent children's ministry. So therefore, I need to kind of look past this. But at the same time, I had been leading up to that space, praying intently for God to lead, God to direct us. And what I was doing was I was wanting it done. I had these certain check marks, which the person kind of fit a check mark, but I was going against what God was pressing in on me. And we let that stuff slide. And then months later, nothing got better. It only got worse. And so it was like, that's a really great reminder. You want to strive for excellence, of course, and you want to have a plan in place, but do not underestimate what God will press in and lead you to do. And then you've got to have the courage and confidence as the leader to do sometimes very uncomfortable things.
That's the part right there. We have to be willing to confront those issues so that we can be well and do well. Because we're always having to think ahead as well,
That's right. That's right. So good.
I hope I answered that, because there was a part of that I think I missed, but
no, because I said, what would you have tweaked that you didn't maybe differently, but what are you celebrating? But what you're celebrating is you do have a team that is responding to your authenticity, your communication. And when they respond that way, it means you're doing the right thing with the communication piece. This is just a person that because of their status in life, what they're struggling with, it's just not a great fit. And those conversations need to have had as well. So you definitely answered both things. So let's go back a bit. I would love to hear, how did you arrive at church planting to begin with? Like, is that something you've always been a part of? What does that look like in your journey, your path to this place?
I'm going to try to be brief on this one, as brief as possible, because I really had to think through, every time I'm asked this question, like, I go back to childhood, but I won't go there. Okay, I'm not going to.
My birthday is on.
But I will give a little bit about our background, because I feel like that's important in leading us to this point. So Rohan and I, we both were raised in the church. Okay. We come from a very rich heritage of both male and female singers, musicians, preachers, and pastors. So basically people leading in a variety of capacities from our families. And my grandmother personally was actually a pastor and led so many to Christ. And my dad is a preacher, not so much so now, because he's much older now, and he's up in his 80s now. So so is Rose's dad. His dad's also actively preaching. So our families have had a very big influence, I'd say, or impact as it pertains to our faith. I mention all of that not because we automatically fell on this path because of that, but our parents loved God so much, and the ministry, they loved serving people, and that's what they modeled for us. And so that has kept us grounded throughout even this process. And so I feel like we were groomed almost just to serve in the church, and we loved it. Not everyone grows up saying they love it, but we actually. So Ro he actually studied church planting, not studying it just so that he could plant a church, but because he was an active youth pastor at the time where we were ministering in New York. So he went to Nyack Alliance Theological Seminary for his master's program in New York. And that's where I think a lot of things started to be revealed to him concerning how we did church. It was so different. So we, even from that moment, were being exposed to something different. Because we grew up in a very traditional apostolic Jamaican church. I don't know if you know anything about Jamaican churches that are apostolic, but very strict, legalistic. That's our background. So we served in the ministry in New York for a number of years, just voluntary. We never got paid or full time. Just full time. It was full time, but full time voluntary. Right. And then moving to Georgia in 2013, we kind of took a break to focus on our family, because that's so important. We needed that time just to focus on our family, not ministry stuff. And after a month or two of family prayer at home, God would lead us to our very first church plant in Marietta, Georgia. Now, we had never served in a church plant before. So we didn't know what that was like until we actually went to this church. And it was actually on the behest of my sister, who was praying. And she actually called and said, hey, there's a church up the street. I don't know anything, but this is what the Lord is telling me. You guys need to go visit this church. And so we went there. Yeah, crazy. We had never served, like I said, in the church plant. And so that was our first experience with that. And that was the beginning, I think, of God exposing us to that, besides Rose's experience in school.
Sure.
And then a major thing happened in 2015. My eldest sister, now there are four, I have three siblings. Well, now I have two. Our eldest sister passed away. She was a woman of God. She loved God. She was a preacher and singer. Sherry Williams. We just love her. And so her passing was a pivotal moment, I think, not just for me, but for Ro, who was also very close to her. And so when she passed away, at that time, we had already been living here 2 years. 2013. She passed away in 2015. So we, God would have it that we moved on from that church plant and moved all the way to Douglasville on the other side, in Paulding County here, but on the other side,
right,
in the south. And I went to this church where it was a larger church. They had been there. They were also a church plant, but they had been around and established for a number of years. And so that exposed us to church systems that we had never been familiar with, small groups, things of that nature. Now, we grew up traditional, so it's a lot different,
Right.
And so we got a taste of what it felt like to be in a church that was structured, contemporary style music. That really was a huge shift for us, especially the fact that it was such a diverse congregation. We had never been really exposed to that, Black churches here, white churches here. Even in New York, it was predominantly a Black church, that we went to. And so this was huge for us. Besides that, it wasn't a Jamaican church. So
right.
So this was God exposing us to something different. And so we were at this church for 2 years, and we became the prayer leaders for the prayer team at the prayer ministry at that time. My husband led it pretty well, and the pastor just developed this friendship with Ro, and he actually invited him, wanted to hire him as one of the associate pastors. When he offered that to him, at the same time, we had a married couple, friends of ours we grew up with kind of in our New York circles. And they had also done ministry. We had done ministry with them together. They made a plea to us to come and help them. They were planting a church in North Carolina. So we had these two offers on the table. So now we had to pray about it. Now, Ro was quite content with the idea of, just serving under someone and being able to do ministry that way. That was a dream come true, to be offered that position.
Right.
But and I was like, let's go for this. But we prayed some more, and we just felt God impressing us to move to North Carolina.
Wow.
To help plant. Now, we knew it would be temporary, but God said, go help them build. And so we went, and we were there for 3 years. And that was our true taste of church planting. So the first few, we had no backing, by the way. Like, they had moved from New Jersey. We came to North Carolina. We're like, hey, let's do this. A young couple. We're like, hey, we had no idea what was to come. The woes, the ups, the lows, the real lows of church planting. We have no backing.
Right.
And I say, don't ever do that. You need backing. Okay.
Yeah.
And so that was our first taste of really building from the ground up. And sometimes I'd be singing, because I was the worship leader at the time. I would be singing to empty seats, and it's not a good feeling. But we grinded, and, we had people come in, and when it got to a point where we felt like God was saying, okay, they have enough help, then at the beginning of the onset of the pandemic is when we moved back to Georgia. And my twin sister, who had moved, I have a twin sister, by the way. She and her family, they had actually moved to Georgia after the passing of my sister. So she was still here. And so I said, yeah, I feel like we need to go back to Georgia, even to be of help to her. She had no family here. She had her husband and kids. She had 6
Sure.
families. So it was nice us coming back to be of support, but the pandemic hit when we moved here. And so we were home for a whole year. But during that year, we kept searching and seeking the Lord for where should we be, all that. And he had to start a marriage ministry. He had to start a prayer ministry during that year, much of it online. And it was amazing what he did during that first year. We lived in Powder Springs, by the way. We moved back to Powder Springs.
Oh.
We were there in 2019. I think that was the onset of the pandemic. 2020
spring.
Yeah. So we were there for a year, and then we didn't really like where we were, that area. So we're like, okay, where should we go, Lord? And he said, Dallas. That's where we found. That's where we would be going, Dallas. And so we moved to Dallas after that first year. We've been here ever since. But I tell you all of that because this is our 7th city. Okay? Our 7th city.
Oh.
Yeah, 7th city. And I'm like, if you've been in Christendom for any period at all, 7 is significant.
I know. I was just going to say that. I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah. And so, everything we've experienced, the moving around, all of that has led to this moment. Our past, our parents, everything has led to this moment. We still have the marriage ministry going on, but let me continue with this story. So we moved to Dallas, Georgia, and so we were here for a while, and we just kept feeling this tug just to pray for the city. Just pray, so we'd get together as a family and just pray for the city, not knowing that God was actually leading us to plant. We had no idea. This is like a whole year of living here. We're still praying, like, okay, God, we still don't know where we want to go to church. This is a hard place. Okay. I got to tell you, it feels like Georgia, even when we moved in 2013, just finding the place to worship, it can be daunting, And so, but like I said, our Rose's desire was just to sit under someone and help, so we've done that for years. But this time, God kept pressing on us to pray. And we, in 2022, the early part of 2022, we went to visit friends of ours, the same pastors that we had helped plant in North Carolina. We went to visit, and they had a special service. It was the pastor's 40th birthday. And they had a guest speaker come in, and he was preaching, but he kept looking at our row. And he was like, I was like, he just kept looking over at us, and he doesn't know us from a hole in a wall. He doesn't know.
Right.
So he said, okay, I have to stop. I don't know why God keeps having me he has a word for you. And he had to stop in the middle of preaching. Well, he was near the end, but he said, I have to give this word. And he said, this whole row here, that was me, row, our 3 kids, and we had 2 friends with us. This entire row, God is saying, you're about to walk into rooms. Okay, into rooms. And then he stopped to pray for Rohan. He was saying things like, you're qualified, and just speaking into him. And I was like, okay, God, I don't know what you're doing here, but you have something's about to happen, and we don't know yet. That was in June of 2022. A couple months later, the Lord kept pressing on me to say to Ro, are you sure God hasn't called you to plant a church? I just felt like asking him that question. And so in September, he said, you know what? I'm gonna fast and pray on this. I'm gonna fast and pray on this. And he couldn't sleep for 3 days, 3 whole days. He couldn't sleep. And when he finally got the answer that it's time to plant a church here in Dallas, he was able to sleep after that.
Oh my goodness.
3 days of fasting and prayer. And I tell you, it was profound. Just the confirmation and upon confirmations that we've received. We're a praying family. And so by now, through these stories, you hear me say it a lot, prophecy, things like that. We believe in that stuff. Yeah. We believe in that. We believe in the gifts. And, God will speak to you in various ways. And he has certainly spoken to us concerning our calling. And then a few months later, we started the process in September. 501c3 process and everything. we were going to do this, but we had no idea how we were going to go about it.
Yeah.
We're like, okay, we have some experience. We know what not to do from what we
Right.
learned in North Carolina. We can build our launch team, but had no backing. And in December of 2022, God would have it that we visited a Christmas Eve service at Creekside Church in Dallas, Georgia. And the only reason we ended up there was because our sons were going to North Holding High School, where they met one of Greg Sizemore's nephews, became very close friends. They invited us to their Christmas Eve service. We went, and ever since then, it's been amazing. When I talk about rooms and doors opening up for us since that moment, that guy what he said, that doors would be open. We have literally been living that, which is why I say to you in the beginning, this is so surreal. We're walking in that word.
Yeah.
It was spoken from when we were even younger, but to be walking in a moment where you're actually seeing the fulfillment of prophecy, it blows your mind, and that's what I say when I feel like we're being carried. And so I'm going through the Stadia process after meeting Greg, and, they introduced us to Stadia, and going through that was just amazing. We needed to go through that.
Yeah.
We needed to go through that. And we had planned on launching August 2023.
Okay.
But, we put a pause on that because God was saying, okay, we need to delay here because there's something to learn and unlearn.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Be ready. And so now we're here, and I'm mind blown. I can't even fully express what the journey has been for us. I know I said a lot there, but it's the stories. There's so many stories that have led us to this point. But here we are, and I'm so thankful.
Oh, it's so beautiful. And that is the value of this space, I believe, is exactly what you just told. Because this is just such a niche space. Like, where are you running into people at the grocery store or at, like if you're working in a office somewhere, you're not typically running into somebody who's got this story of starting a new church. It's a really specific thing. It doesn't make us any better than anybody else. It's a calling that's very specific. And so I find that it is just so helpful to hear the story of other people and how they got to this space, because it is like, I love the ebb and flow that you just said. You went here and it was like God had stuff for you to learn, but it was a temporary space. And you went here and you were flourishing and you were healing. And I cannot tell you, I don't know of a church starter who has any different story. Like, it is always that. It is always this up and down and up and down. And if you were ever tempted at this point, the down spot, to just chuck it, you have no idea what the next up is. And vice versa. When you're up and you're like, we've arrived. We've got it figured out. It would be wise for you to remember there's 7 cities that Suzanne is talking about having served in 7 cities. And so I really want to thank you for just thinking through that and helping us see those dots connected, because I know personally there's nothing more encouraging. Somebody can give me a bumper sticker, faith sentence, and I'm like, whatever. That is not helpful on any level. But when I hear your story, it's like fuel for my soul in a way that nothing else is. So I really appreciate that.
Ooh, that is good.
He's so good. He's so good. All right. So I could talk to you for 3 hours, but I'm gonna keep our listeners tight, and we're gonna keep them tuned in. So as we come toward the end, okay, I'm gonna say, because again, we like to get super practical. What do you feel like, from where you're sitting right now, your past launch day? What do you feel like your biggest challenge is right now? And on the flip, what is bringing you the most joy as you feel the future stretch out in front of you, having no idea what's going to look like, but what is giving you great joy right now and your biggest challenge?
Well, a huge challenge for me on a practical level first. A huge challenge for me is letting go of things, allowing myself to just leave things for another day, not tackling everything all at once. This is our new baby, this new church plant, it's our new baby. Yeah. And so it feels like it should have all our attention. And being bivocational, it certainly requires many duties. And so I have to work or fight hard to maintain that balance. Taking time for myself is a challenge. Yeah. I have to really fight for rest, for quality time and in meditating on God's word and devotion. I have to really fight for that. It's something I'm
going to pause you right there. Can you say a little bit more about that? Can you, with whatever you're comfortable sharing, we're not digging into your private business, but is there something, because that's good. Everybody's going to go, oh, how does she, like, yes, that's my story. Like, how do I do that? What would be something that you could say is a way that you have fought for it?
Well, the biggest battle is in the mind, really. That's me speaking over myself, telling myself, okay, this can wait. It's time to go to sleep.
Good.
Your body needs rest. Or even you need to just make sure you're drinking water. Because especially in the winter season, having water is self-care. And sometimes I'm not even having enough water, so just stopping. Because I can go literally from sun up to sundown and beyond sundown working.
Yeah.
Just working, not even taking a break. So I have to even set timers on my cell phone to say, okay, get up now. You've been sitting too long, maybe every 20 minutes, set that timer to say, get up and go walk or, do I always do it? No, but I'm constantly telling myself to do these things and encouraging myself, even to read a book. I challenged myself to read 2 books per month. This month has been a challenge because of church planting, but I actually got through 1. So thank God for that, so just challenging yourself too, consciously challenging yourself, writing it down and planning that out and saying, okay, I'm going to do this. And so that's how I've been fighting for that.
That's good.
Fighting for time with my husband. Mondays after Sunday, Mondays are a day that we're going to go sometime with just us. And we've been doing that so far. We do have to fight for it because things pull at us. Our kids' schedules pull at us. We have a senior who's involved in so many things in high school. There's a lot there, but that's
thanks for getting real specific. I love what you said about like, it's even a mental reminding telling yourself, walk away. Like it is never going to disappear. The list will never end. And I can look back I remember very specifically, I'm sitting, we planted the church in this from this house. We then moved to Vegas to do our 4 years of ministry there and ended up back in this house. That's a whole story. But I remember sitting right here in this corner and I can see myself unloading to Jeff in our bedroom. I'm sitting in the corner. He's sitting on the bed and I'm talking. It was at night and I was just like, processing, because I'm a verbal processor. And I have a very distinct memory of that. And it grieves me. It doesn't make me feel shame, but it grieves me to go, I did not set a clear enough boundary. Like I wanted to I was like, if I could talk about it a bit more, I can solve it. I can figure it out. And he was so gracious in that. But as I look back, I really should have put in some better hard stops of like, no, we're not going to talk about this 24/7. It never gets solved. It may get, you can get it a little bit better, but it never gets solved. So stop. You've got to walk away at some point during your day to have mental space for other things.
I mean, we'll sit on our date and we're talking about church. So like, okay, no, Ro. Like we have to stop each other.
Yeah.
We have to stop each other and say, no, we're gonna Talk about something else. Talk about our
Yeah.
dreams, our passions. That has nothing to do with church right now. Let's leave church off the table.
That's right. That's right.
So
It's such a good
it's
word. Such
hard.
a good word. Yeah. So
But,
what do you feel joy about? What's a
yeah.
thing that you're feeling good about?
So my greatest joy is finding out that God provides even the things we haven't asked for. That's what he keeps telling us. I'm giving
Mm,
you what you haven't even asked me for. And he
so good.
continues to show up in remarkable ways. And he has, like I said earlier, sent destiny helpers to help us along this journey.
So good.
We're recognizing that we're not alone in this.
Mm,
And like I mentioned earlier, we are being carried in so
mm,
many ways. So we have a community. I'm just so filled with joy for our community.
yeah.
And my biggest philosophy now, and it's been even being a teacher for years, my
Yeah.
biggest philosophy is that we do not have to reinvent the wheel. We
That's
do
right
not have to reinvent
there.
the wheel. Okay. We've we're taking the lessons throughout this process, even from Stadia, from Greg and Leilani, our mentors, they're there for us. Listen, I now love feedback. Maybe a year ago, I would not be going after feedback. I love it now because it's helping us to improve. It's like,
Mm,
it's the way we get better. We get better in community by talking to others and not isolating ourselves. And I tell you, the penalty of being a leader is that you're gonna go through loneliness.
mm.
But realizing that you can't do this by yourself is going to make you a great leader,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm learning to rely on my resources, my people resources. And I'm
Mm,
finding so much joy in that
that
I
is
don't
good.
have to do this by myself. We don't have to walk this journey by ourselves. And it's so uplifting that we're never alone.
Yeah.
Woo! It
Oh,
makes me feel so much joy.
yeah.
And that's how we live in a God moment where we're not doing it in isolation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That whole communal piece of it, I just think over the past few years, I think my guess obviously is that COVID really helped us. We did not have a choice but to figure some
Yeah.
of that out because of the gaping wound that the isolation left us with. But I
Yeah.
feel like there's probably a huge part of God he's just sitting there going, where in the world how did you get so far off track?
Yeah.
Like, especially in Western culture, we're such mavericks and we're
Yeah.
gonna do it, we're gonna bootstrap it. And it's
Yeah.
all a farce. It's just a lie. Even
Right.
if you dig deeply into scenarios that look like it's bootstrapping and it's individualistic, if you dig, you don't have to dig. You just kind of scratch the surface and you find out it was like a setting that was already just like primed for it. It was a very unusual one-off kind of thing. And so, and even if it were true, which it's not, but even if it were, what you miss out on with the community and the joy, and there's
Ah,
nothing that teaches you to be open-handed better than being at the receiving end of help and having to ask for it. And that's what we get all weird and scared about our identity and our
yeah.
pride. But once you've had that beat out of you by circumstances where you don't have a choice,
Yeah.
you realize there's no other way to live. I don't want to live in any other way than having to ask for help. Really.
Yes. And I mean, being an independent learner for so long, I mean, because so many of us are independent learners, meaning we know how to gather information and do things on our own. We're self-reliant, but we cannot live that way.
Yes.
We have to know where to seek help because we will tumble over if we don't
Yes.
seek help. And yeah, I'm constantly learning that, even along, I'm still learning that. Just
Sure.
ask for help. Don't do this alone. Call Leilani. I call her. I
That's
need
right.
help with a sauna. I need help. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know. I know.
So,
It's so beautiful. Oh man, Suzanne, there is nothing better that we could have landed on at the end. I just think for you to be in this space of this season and to have that perspective to remind, like, because there's some people that would go, well, later you can sort through that, but right now it is bootstrapping, it's figuring it out, it's digging in and gritting and grinding, and you're like, of course there's hard work, but it's not grinding out by yourself. It can't be. We want you to thrive. Yeah.
Absolutely.
You are a joy. This will not be your last time on the podcast, my friend.
Oh my goodness. And we should go out for lunch or something.
Because you are local-ish. Local-ish. Everything is in Atlanta, because everybody knows, if you've been listening, Leilani, who she's referring to, has been a return guest and who also is in real life friend of mine. And so I'm always like, praise God that I actually this is real life friend for me. So I am eager to make that the same with you, Suzan. What a joy you have been today.
Oh, thank you for having me. This has been a pleasure.
Well, our community is going to gain so much from this, and we will continue to pray for you and Rohan and all the joy that God is working through Deeper Church.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And thank you and Jess for all your support. You guys.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Plant Strong podcast. Plant Strong is part of the Stadia Podcast Network. To find more great podcasts and to see how Stadia can help you start thriving, growing, multiplying churches for the next generation, be sure to check out stadia.org/podcasts.